The tendency to get fixated on the destination, whilst understandable, because we're constantly in motion in many ways as human beings, and looking into the future and wondering about this and wondering about that, and actually forecasting to the future in the hope maybe that it will be better, or the fear that it will get worse. And so by our very nature we're creatures in a certain momentum, and that's natural. But on the spiritual path, if we take that momentum too literally, or the what I call destination consciousness too literally, and we invest everything of ourselves in a future, the idea that a future destination is where the salvation lives, is where the Shangri-La is where the beautiful life, or the peaceful life, or the awakened life is, then we miss something very intrinsically powerful and true, which is that the true meeting is now, is now, is now. And how we show up to now is the measure of the depth of us, not the idea that in some future time I'm going to turn up more present than I am now. You see, it can get really kind of tricky how the human mind will project itself into the idea of the future being somehow better, maybe, or more satisfying, more peaceful, more present than it is now. And so what I encourage is to see how you're showing up now. How do you show up? How do you show up in your own life? How do you show up to yourself? How do you show up to what you feel? How do you show up to your body? How do you show up when the emotions rise up? How do you show up, of course, then with another, with a beloved other, with your intimate partner? How do you show up with your parents, with your mother? How do you show up at the events of the world? How do you show up on social media? How do you show up in all aspects of life? Because that's where the learning really is. That's where the intimacy is. That's where the opportunity is to see just how present and open you are in all of those encounters. And that's where it starts to get real profound, because you get to see, you get to witness, you get to notice. If you're really true, if you're willing to be utterly truthful with yourself, well, actually I'm not. I'm bringing a whole bag of ideas and beliefs and hopes and avoidances and grievances, strategies to this meeting that I have with my body, with my emotion, with my thoughts, with my other, with my family. So you get to see yourself, and as you get to see through with a certain truth what's really going on, then that gives you a freedom, a choice ultimately, rather than the investment in saying, well, I don't like this moment, but the future moment will be much better than this. And so you reach grabbing for some future moment that never quite arrives, and it can quite easily become another way of avoiding this moment. And then when you look deeply, all you ever see is a whole bunch of a whole bunch of moments strung together that we call our life, that we call time. If we could but see with a microscopic quantum eye, we'd see, like a camera will see, thousands, millions of micro moments woven together by perception, to string together as though it's a seamless show, a seamless movement, which is convenient because otherwise all trouble would break loose. But actually, you know, this happens with enlightenment experiences, psychedelic experiences, divine ecstatic experiences, deep meditation experiences. You can see, you can taste that actually life is composed of an endless series of now. And if that's the case, which it is, then we have to see, or we get the opportunity or the invitation to see how we're showing up in this moment, in this moment, in this moment. And that wakes up the dreamer, wakes us up from the dream. The dream is just kind of almost going along. And this applies just as much on the spiritual path. There are just as much dreamers on the spiritual path as there are on any other path. And by dreamer, I don't mean a visionary or a mystic. I actually mean somebody who's kind of lost in the dream and has taken almost the dream state and superimposed it on the spiritual journey. And the whole point of the spiritual journey, at least in the context of how I talk about it and how I talk about it with Amoda Ma, my wife, and how she articulates it, the whole point is to fall out of the dream and come into the now. And that means we really need to go deeper into seeing how are we showing up. That's where the intimacy is. Because if we're truthful with ourselves and honest, and there's no judgment about whether we're showing up not really very well, or we're carrying an overlay, or carrying some trauma or pain or whatever it is, well, then there's something true to work with there. It's not coming at it from an avoidance way of being. It's actually coming from the raw truth way of being. And we can only see that if we're prepared to stop investing so much in some future destination orientation and to start seeing how we're showing up in this moment and in this moment and in this moment. And I know it sounds kind of almost trite, you know, or you've heard it all before. But you've heard it all before because it's the truth. It's the truth of things. And it's almost like the greatest invitation, because it's the invitation to stop and show up. Stop it. I mentioned like a dog a few weeks ago, which made somebody chuckle. But it is like that. It's like, come into this moment. What is here? Thought, yeah, usually. Emotion, could be some anxiety or some stress or some discomfort. Body pulsating, blood flowing, cranky, hearing things, feeling things. What else? Emptiness, silence, an overlay, presence, openness, or fear, or like, you know, you start to listen. You start to listen deeply. come into the inner mechanism of yourself and to hear, feel and hear, to be intimate with oneself, one's inner world is it. And that's possible anywhere. All you have to do is let go and sit and listen. What do you hear? What's there in your inner world? I wonder what's going on in your inner world. Not on the superficial narrative. There's just a lot of stuff that goes round and round. But I mean on your inner world. Because that's where the real intimacy is. That's where the real depth is. That's where the real tenderness, vulnerability, rawness is. But that's where the truth of you is. In that place, below that place, beyond that place. Many blessings.